Welcome everybody to this preview of the Singularity Summit, which is going to be held in Spain in a month's time. You're going to hear later on from other speakers more about the summit itself, but I'm just going to set the scene by sharing a few things that I've noticed in the news in the last few days. Maybe even yesterday morning you may have seen on the news a lot of reports about driverless cars coming to Britain, people wondering what the implications are going to be. And you may have heard of a company called Uber, which is already causing a lot of disruption with this new business model. This is an artist's impression of what an Uber car is going to look like soon, which is a driverless Uber car. It's by Zach Cantor, and Zach's view is that these autonomous cars are going to reshape the economy by 2025, and in the process destroy 10 million jobs, not just drivers but also body shape, repair jobs, ambulance chasing lawyer jobs, because there's going to be many fewer crashes. A lot of changes ahead. That's an example of a robot. Here's another robot. Do you know what this one does? This is called Eve. It was created jointly by university researchers from Aberystwyth, Cambridge and Manchester. It is used to discover drugs dramatically faster than humans can, because it's got the capability to do lots of experiments and to do lots of analysis, 10,000 compounds a day. And it has already been analysing lots of drugs which can cure, to an extent, cancer, looking for possible solutions of the same drugs in malaria and other African infectious diseases, and has found a very promising line already. Here's another kind of robot. I keep mentioning robots because people say, and I think it's right, that robotics is the fastest growing industry currently. This is a robot which is actually a 3D printer, and what it's printing is a trachea, so it's a bio 3D printer. It's creating a windpipe, which has got to be the right texture, it's going to be the right rigidity, but also the right flexibility, and it's got to have the right combination of biological cells too. And there's a fascinating video of how that works. I won't show you that video because I want to show you another video of another place where 3D printing is taking place. This is, as you can see, outer space. And why do people think about printing things in outer space? Well, if you can imagine trying to repair things in the space shuttle. It's such a long job to manufacture them on Earth and send them up to the space shuttle. Far better, especially for things that are plastic and eventually for things that are electronic, far better to be able to print them up in the space shuttle itself, and you could send up some piece of software. And I'll let the Made in Space group tell that story. And by the way, the Made in Space company was founded at a Singularity University course when 3 people came together and were inspired by this idea. Move beyond Earth and live on other planets. That's an inspiring vision for some. If you want to find out more about Made in Space, it's actually covered in the chapter 2 of a book that's just been published by Peter Diamandis and John Kotler. They talk about exponential technologies, including 3D printing. It's a fascinating story. John Kotler actually wrote an article the other day in Forbes, reflecting on what had happened since he wrote with Peter Diamandis the first book together. That book was called Abundance. They wrote it in 2012, predicting the changes that would come. And Stephen Kotler's response just the other day in Forbes is, things are actually arriving faster than he'd even expected when he wrote that book in 2012. So his theme in this article in Forbes is the acceleration of acceleration. Peter Diamandis, his co-author, is the co-founder of Singularity University. And here's another example of the acceleration of acceleration. It shows the curve of decreasing costs for something that's very important for future healthcare. It's sequencing the entire human genome. When this was first done in 2001, it cost $100 million. Not something you're going to rush in to do in a hurry. But lots of clever people worked on it and improved it pretty rapidly, so that just 6 years later it was down to $10 million. Still pretty expensive, but it was halving every 2 years, and that's the same rate of progress as has been made famous as Moore's Law. So people were getting quite excited already about the future possibility. But then, more and more people realized the possibilities of this transformational field. More and more people got involved, and what happened next is that the price came down 1,000 times in just 4 years. So it was now halving every 5 months. That is the acceleration of acceleration, which happens when more and more people see the opportunity and apply their creativity and ingenuity on top of what people have been doing already. This is very hard to predict. It's very hard to see what's going to happen, except that we can say this: many existing businesses are going to be disrupted. Many existing industries are going to be disrupted. And if we take the view of the Babson graduate school, they have said recently that according to their predictions, 40% of the current Fortune 500, the great companies of the world, 40% of them will no longer be in their place in 10 years' time. That's actually a conservative estimate. If we look at what Richard Foster, who's an emeritus professor at Yale, has said, looking at the Standard & Poor's 500, he points out that the length of time companies stay there is decreasing. And especially with the disruptive capabilities of accelerating and converging technologies, his view is that in just 8 years' time, more than 3/4 of the S&P 500 will be companies we have not heard of yet. So if you are representing one of these large companies today, you ought to be wondering hard, how can you keep your position there? Or if you are thinking about a new startup, if you are working with some colleagues on the capabilities of this disruptive technology, you may be one of the people who, in 8 years' time, are displacing some of these former giants. How do we make sense of this all? Just a few years ago, Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil got talking together, and they thought they need a new kind of university to cope with this. Not a university whose syllabus stays the same for 5 years at a time, but a university whose syllabus changes all the time with the latest insight. And so I'll show you finally, before I hand over to the next speaker, I'm going to show you a brief teaser of a film that is about to be released about the university. And it starts off with my former cosmology lecturer from Cambridge, Sir Martin Rees.
Here's a quote.
The future is in session. 9 weeks to change the world, we talk about there. That's a 9-week-long course. That's not on the menu today, though some of you may well want to consider joining one of these courses in the future. What we're talking about today is possibility to be at a 3-day course in Seville. On the way in, you have the chance to drop off your business card in a box, and we will be drawing one of these business cards later on if you want to have the opportunity to win a ticket. So in case you missed that on the way in, then sneak out quietly and leave your business card there. We will draw that at the end of the session. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to hand over to the second speaker in today's session, who is Russell Buckley. Russell Buckley is a serial angel investor. He has a background in a lot of mobile fields. He is one of the founders of the field of mobile advertising, and he is also a graduate from Singularity University. And Russell will talk about, well, the exponential. What does it mean? How it's hard to get our heads around it. How it changes things in very unpredictable ways. Russell Buckley.
So, rather than give you lots of examples of... Is that better? Rather than give you lots of other stats like David's done a great job of doing, I wanted to sort of unpack the idea of exponential, because we talk about it quite a lot in day-to-day life, and it's increasingly used in the press every day. And I don't think we really take very much notice of what it really means. So we'll start off with talking about this chap, who was a gentleman by the name of Sir William Preece. And in Victorian times, he was the managing director of what was called the Great British Post Office at the time. And he came up with this phrase, which was, "The Americans have need of the telephone, but we do not. We have plenty of messenger boys." And there's two ways of looking at Sir William, I suppose. One of which is, what an idiot, because he was just about to do his industry and just couldn't see the potential of this exponential technology. But actually, I think we should be more generous. The British Post Office at the time was one of the most efficient organisations ever, and actually puts today's post office to shame. You could actually send and receive 7 first-class postcards before lunch back in London back in 1865. So it was a hugely successful operation. He was a real leader of his day. But he was the first example I could ever found of somebody who was unable to see the impact of exponential technology on his business. So it's quite a common fault, and we'll go on to see some examples of that. But that's because it's very, very hard for us to understand with our reptilian evolved brains what exponential is. We understand linear quite well, but not exponential. So as an example, if I take 30 steps from this stage, I'll probably get to the back of the room, and we can understand that because we're kind of evolved to understand that we need to run away from lions and tigers and stuff. But if I take 30 exponential steps, I get somewhere completely different. So if I take 1 step, and then the next step is double, and the next step is four times the first one, etc. I actually get to the moon in 30 steps. That's the power of exponential. So we understand exponential quite well, and we talk about Moore's law, doubling in technology in terms of speed and power every 12 to 18 months. But when we actually start applying that thinking, that's the kind of effect we get. So as an example, which I think helped me understand it a lot, and I first heard it from Peter Diamandis when I was actually at SU a few years back. If you imagine yourself in this huge football stadium, and you're right at the top at the back in the cheap seats, and somebody comes along at half time and puts 1 little drop of water on the centre spot. And that's a magic drop of water, and it's going to grow exponentially, so it's going to double in a given period of time. But unlike Moore's law, which doubles every 12 to 18 months, it's going to double every minute. So the first question is, if it's going to double every minute, and you're right at the back, at the top, how long is it before you're going to drown? And the answer is, surprisingly for most people, a mere 49 minutes. We're evolved to think it's going to be a lot longer. So the next question, though, is that if you are looking around and you can see a little bit of a problem at about 45-minute level, so you've got 4 minutes to save your life, you won't actually see very much water. You'll see some splashing around because the stadium's still 97% empty. So all the real growth, the noticeable growth, comes at the end, not the beginning. And that's why it's very difficult to spot exponential trends. So with 4 minutes to save your life, the stadium's 93% empty, and you've really got to move quickly. And this is why industries completely get technology and exponential technology wrong. They misunderstand it. They may be able to see the pattern sometimes, but they always underestimate how quickly they must act once they can see the pattern. Another example, and this is more emphasising how slowly it works in the beginning, and this is why it's so difficult for people like Sir William Priest to spot these patterns, is a lily pad. If you can imagine the biggest lake you can possibly imagine in the world, something like Lake Superior or Lake Erie in the US. And if you imagine there's 1 lily pad on day 1, and by the end of the month, day 30, it'll be 100% coverage of lily pads. On day 20, our minds tell us that it should be quite a lot of lily pads. But the chances are that if you get a low-flying aeroplane and fly over the lake, you won't notice any, because the actual coverage of lily pads at that point is 0.001% with 10 days to go. And again, all the growth is going to happen at the end. So that's why it's very, very hard to see these patterns. But once you're familiar with them, and once you sort of think about exponential growth, you'll be able to see them and hopefully take advantage of them. Here's a very visual example of it. This was the announcement in 2005 of Pope Benedict being elected to be Pope. And in 2013, the world has changed completely, as you can see in a very visual way with this famous Reuters picture. In here you can see one person with a phone taking a photograph. Here, everybody's got one. And that's happened in a very short period of time. So it's a fairly easy pattern to understand, but businesses consistently get it wrong all the time. And this is an example of the FT of all people, who in 2012 the CEO of the FT, who should be pretty financially and mathematically literate, you'd have thought, came up with this headline, which was, the FT says that by 2020 mobile readership is 60%. So there's a guy who sort of seems to get it, that seems to think that mobile is going to happen. But then you unpack that slightly, and he made that prediction in 2012 when mobile readership was already 10%. And guess what? The year before it had been 5%, the year before it had been 2.5%. So there's an exponential trend for you. But rather than doing the maths, he just kind of wildly guessed and said 60% by 2020. But if you do the maths, in 2013 it would have doubled, which would have been 20%. In 2014 it would have doubled again, which would be 40%. And by the way, what it was 40% in 2014. So this isn't a sort of a prediction. This is actual historical fact now. And this year it's going to be 80%. So if you're a business and you think that you've told your people to be prepared for the day when mobile is going to be the primary source of readership, just about 60%, but it's going to happen 5 years later than it actually did, you are going to be really in trouble. And this is the power of exponential. So another example of how this is all happening around us without us really noticing, mobile is the one of the characteristics of it is it's actually cannibalizes other industries in an incredibly ruthless way. So these pages which we used to have in the 1980s, and nobody has them anymore because we all got mobiles. Graphical calculators, again, we use our PCs and then increasingly our mobiles to use these. These haven't been redesigned for 20 years because what's the point? Nobody buys them anymore. Alarm clocks. Again, if you go to John Lewis or a big department store today, you can't get alarm clocks. They have maybe one example of them, whereas 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, there were probably 30 or so in stock. I also think it's a rather quaint idea that when you go to a hotel, they check in and they said, would you like an early morning call tomorrow? And it's a completely anachronistic idea because we all got our alarm clocks with us, which are called our mobile phones. PDAs, back in the day, Microsoft and Palm used to have big arguments about who was most important in the PDA market share. I wrote at the time that it was like two bald men fighting over a comb, which is completely irrelevant. Who had market share of one of the dying industry? And cameras, there's far more cameras on our mobile phones than were ever produced as standalone items. When I sort of talk about this and point about this trend, there's sort of two sorts of people really I find, one of whom I call a convergentist and one of whom I call a separatista. And a convergentist sort of says, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had all our devices all in one machine, which is currently a mobile phone. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? But there's always somebody who looks a bit more like this, who's normally a bloke, who says, but my MP3 player plays far better MP3s than my iPhone does in his head. And he's sort of right at the edge cases. So ironically, the PC, a big screen, is much better for coding today than the mobile. But generally speaking, for most people, most of the time, the convergentist always wins. And it was best perhaps explained to me by this man called Jim Richardson, and he's nothing to do with technology. He's actually an old school photographer, and he's a 27-year veteran of National Geographic, so he's really at the top of his game. And he takes splendid photographs like this, mainly of sort of Celtic themes. And I was speaking at a conference a while back, and he was also on stage talking about photography, and somebody asked him at the end of his speech, Jimmy, you really inspired me to go out and take some wonderful photographs. What camera should I get? And this was 2 or 3 years ago, so camera phones weren't quite as good in those days. But he said, after a little thought, he said, look, the most important camera you can have is the one you have with you when you want to take a brilliant photograph. So just get really good at taking photographs with your mobile phone. And nowadays, when the pixel count in mobile phones is so much more dramatic, you can't really tell the difference between a professional photographer, freshly produced on a real proper standalone camera, and a mobile phone anyway. So he's absolutely right. for most people, most of the time, the mobile phone is the best camera around. Some things coming down the pipe. You can already see that the what's happened still cameras will happen in video cameras already. That's a trend already. Landlines, people are increasingly ignoring them and not having them. And if you think about it, it's a really weird thing to do, to phone somewhere where you think someone might be at some point, rather than actually phone them where they are on their mobile phone today. Even if they choose not to answer, you know that they'll get the message immediately. The MP3 player standalone is on its way out as well, and it's interesting because back in about 2005, I suppose, I predicted that Apple would produce the iPhone, and my reasoning at the time was that if they didn't, they would lose the iTunes and the iPod business, which was incredibly profitable for them. And so they had to cannibalize their own business, basically. Apple's one of the few companies which does that consistently, by the way. And so they had no choice but to launch an iPhone. So it wasn't that we can do a better mobile phone than anybody else. It was we have to do this, otherwise we're screwed. And I read, a few years ago in Steve Jobs' biography that actually, yes, that was the very process they went through at the very same time. The sudden realization if they didn't do this, they were in trouble. Diaries, which is something your parents used to keep track of appointments. Ladies are increasingly putting their makeup on when they put it on the tube if they're late for an appointment, rather than having a little compact mirror there using the front-facing camera of their mobile phone, I've noticed. So if you've got shares in those little mirrors or whatever, I'd sell that company if I were you. Standalone navigation is dead. It's going to go either to the phone or the car, and when we get self-driving cars, that'll be irrelevant too. And handheld gaming, again, is on the way out. Far more people play, Angry Birds or Candy Crush on the mobile phone than ever bought those things. And where's it going next? Well, it's going to be a health monitor. It'll be our translator, increasingly so, translator. It'll be our personal identity, how we get into things, whether it be our houses, our cars, our offices, or just proving who we are to get into our data files. It's going to consume money and marketing too, so all change. And indeed the television, the idea of us all gathering around a big screen to watch television when the broadcast think we want to watch it rather than when we want to watch it on our own devices is largely going to be anachronistic. And indeed, you can also see this is going to happen to the PC for most people most of the time. I started writing this about the mobile will do to the PC, what the PC did to the mainframe about 8 or 9 years ago, and then it was actually rather an incredible thought, which most people disagreed with, but actually you can now see that world is approaching fast. But if you're one of these sort of people and you say, oh, but I can't do stuff on my PC today, on my mobile today, that I need to create a PowerPoint or write a document or whatever, that's just because the world hasn't really caught up with the tools we need to do it on our mobile. And some examples of that might be a docking station if you want to use an old 100-year-old technology to create documents with a keypad or a typewriter type of interface. But increasingly we're going to be seeing other ways of interacting with technology, where the Google Glass is far from dead. It's sort of been sidelined a little bit to take the pressure off it. But we'll see a resurgence of that at some point, without question. And possibly the next phase of it will be in the form of contact lenses, where they'll be so discreet that you won't actually know people are looking at you through an augmented reality lens, and perhaps seeing your names above your heads and what your net worth is and various other things. And obviously the neglected area which we use to input data is voice, which I'm beginning to use voice more and more. And Peter Diamandis was saying the same thing. He doesn't actually type anymore. He uses voice to dictate everything, whether it be SMSs or email. It's much better these days. I've got a new smartwatch which I talk to regularly, which makes me feel a little bit embarrassed, but I'm sure I'll get used to it eventually. But the voice commands are brilliant on it. And if you think it's all going to stop there, the form factor is going to change very dramatically again. This will be the size of a mobile phone in 2036. You can't see it, by the way. It'll be the size of a red blood cell, and it'll be 1 billion times more powerful. And that's not just exponential trends, that's just what's happened in the last 25 years, and they're extrapolating it back and up. So a lot of change coming down the pipeline. In the process, we're going to see huge change to various professions. The medical profession, in particular, this is a tricorder, which is the new X Prize competition, where we'll be able to go up to somebody and go, and it'll diagnose us about what's wrong with us, our blood count, our potential for cancer, or whatever else is ailing us, which means that all the GPs in the country are suddenly wondering what they're meant to be doing, because that's their job. Already 25% of the Air Force in the US is unmanned, so it turns out that the best possible training you can be to have a military career these days is to play lots of video games, and preferably ones based on war, rather than sort of the traditional route of marching up and down and shouting at people. 3D printing, David showed that really interesting article. That's going to change manufacturing dramatically in the next 10 to 15 years. Education, Sal Khan is leading the way with the MOOC concept. Suddenly, everybody can access the best teachers in the world on their mobile devices, and again, the world's changed. So what can you do about all this? Well, I think coming here is a start. Going to Singularity University events is great, because you need to find out what's happening and tell other people what's happening. We're about to enter a world where we're just not prepared for this kind of rapid change, emotionally or politically. The last time we had such a rapid change in society was when we basically moved from an agrarian lifestyle into an industrial one. And if you remember how the world coped, they primarily got pissed on gin for the next 200 years. It was such a shock to the system. Let's hope that we don't have the same solution, and let's apply it intelligently and work out what we can do to fit into this. So I really urge you to go to Madrid and find out more, and hopefully go on a longer program at SU itself, and immerse yourself in this new world. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Russell. So is the smart glasses going to do to the mobile what the mobile's done to the PC, and what the PC did to the desktop? No, we need to swap over to Louis' laptop. We're going to go next. I'll just say a couple of things while we're doing that swap over. As I said, somebody here is going to have the lucky opportunity to win a free ticket to the event in Spain. You've got to stay here until we do the draw, so if we take your name out of the hat and you're not here, then I'm sorry, we're going to draw another one. And by the way, we're going to ask you a question when you get if your name is drawn. So I hope you've been paying attention, because we're going to ask you a question based on some of the content. Actually, I'll tell you what the question is. The question is, why do you personally want to go to the event in Seville? And if you say you want to be in a warm, lovely town, that's not quite good enough. If you say that you fancy being in a historical city with great architecture, which is true, that's not going to be quite good enough either. So the hint is, you better mention something about the summit, and what you might learn at the summit, or who you might meet at the summit. And Louise, who is the managing director of Singularity Summit in Spain, is going to talk us through that. So, round of applause.
Right, so I'll start with an acknowledgement and an apology. An acknowledgement to everyone who's been or is going to be on stage, and everyone who's set this up, and everyone who's showed up as well. And an apology because I need to catch a flight, and I will be leaving at around 10:25 or something like that, but I'll leave leaflets and business cards in case anyone wants to contact me a little bit later. So I was told that in order to provide information, you needed to cover the 5 W's. So we're going to try to cover the 5 W's about the Singularity Summit in Spain in these minutes. Let me put economy just in case. So why? And I'm going to start showing you a picture that you may recall. You know what this is?
Japan.
Japan. That's Japan after the tsunami. And let us go back to this idea in a while, but bear in mind that what we are going through is like a tsunami. Why is it like a tsunami? This is a graph drawn by Ray Kurzweil in his book, The Singularity is Near. This is a logarithmic scale, so every step is an exponential step, it's a tenfold step. And look at all the events in evolution since life appeared on Earth 4 million years ago. They all stick to that line, which means there's a pattern. If we turn this scale into a linear one, the curve changes like that. So it's not that we are in an accelerating world, it is an exponentially accelerating world. This is how the global the devices connected to the internet are evolving. If you have a mobile phone, a smartphone, a tablet, and a PC connected to the internet, you're already 50% above the world average. This is what the world average is going to be by 2020, which means 7 per person as an average. Moore's law, if you calculate how the computing power from the very first devices, the electromechanical devices at the beginning of the 20th century, you will see that the number of calculations per second and per $1,000 device has also been growing exponentially. Again, this is a logarithmic plot. So there's no reason to think we are there at last, that everything has reached its final point. No, it will go on, and we will see what that means. It means we've already been shown a plot of how the DNA sequencing has been decreasing in price, but it's not been decreasing just in price. It's also been decreasing in time. 13 years for the Human Genome Project, 3 years for the Cellular Project, and less than 3 days in February 2014, but it was less than 1 day by June 2014. Imagine what that may mean in a couple of years. Actually, January the 8th, the first human tests are going to happen with nanobots to fight cancer. You know, in the news there was that by 2014 or 2050, 80% of the population in the UK, I think it was, would have cancer. The good news is that no one will die out of cancer, because it's going to be fought with specific drugs, specific nanobots. This is the prototype of Google car. It looks a little bit like an egg with wheels. This does not look exactly the same. This is a prototype of Mercedes, and it was shown in Las Vegas last month. That is a different thing. And of course, you don't need to be looking at the road. You can have a meeting, or you can sleep once your car is driving you. But yesterday in the news, you must have seen this. That's not just in the US already, it's already going to be here in the UK, hopefully in Spain as well. Don't know whether by the time I will land later today, but definitely will be soon. Drones, you've heard about drones. Now drones, this is news from January as well, can auto-regulate, can regulate themselves, and that means avoiding crashes and avoiding problems in the third dimension, not just in the 2 dimensions like the cars. This is the cost, 42 cents it costs to send 2 kilograms over 10-kilometer distance, once you take into account all the different expenses. 42 cents of a dollar, right? And that is how it is changing. Actually, this is news from Spain, the Amazon universe, and they say that they're getting into food, cinema, or robots. That's Amazon. Amazon is having $200 million losses almost every year, but they are growing by 2 figures every year. They are really coping with the market. Once they've monopolized the market, we will see what they are going to do. If they are allowed to do it, because this is from January the 25th, and this is from February the 10th, Alibaba is catching up with Amazon. Alibaba was launched, as you can remember, last year. So it's winning over it. How 3D printing is changing the world. We've seen a couple of slides on that. But let me tell you something that looks a little bit weird, a little bit funny. Imagine a 3D printed pizza. It looks funny, sounds funny, until the moment you learn that NASA has given out a grant of 100,000 pounds for pizzas to be 3D printed, and this is the company that has won it. They do not look fun. They do look serious. And NASA is not about cartoons or anything like that. So that is how things are moving. This is news also from December. $3,000 for a 3D printed dress. This is Ray Kurzweil. We've already heard him. This is the Exponential Finance seminar in June 2014, and this is what he predicts.
In the 2030s, they'll go non-invasively into our brain and basically put our neocortex on the cloud.
Right. Scary. But remember that by 1860, people believed that the human body could not cope with speeds higher than 30 kilometers per hour. We've seen a lot of examples already about that. Again, Kickstarter, you know Kickstarter, 850 euros per minute they made in 2014. Does anyone here make 850 euros per minute, even overnight, through a complete year? That's a good idea, a computer and an internet connection. That's everything it takes to create something like this. Or Facebook. Facebook is a freshman, Zuckerberg, a computer, internet connection. That profit they made in 2014. And this is just normal current newspapers that we have in our hands, actually in our hands, in our devices every day. So if we expand Moore's law a little bit further ahead, we will see that by 2025, 2023 more or less, a computer this price, not this size, will have the computation capacity of the most complex structure in the world, in the known universe, which is the human brain. But by 2050, it will have the computation capacity of the entire humanity. What does that mean? 2025 means that the 8-year-olds will be at university, the 6-year-old will be finishing their A-levels or similar studies, and the 3-year-olds will be starting their secondary education. For teachers who need to prepare lessons for those children who will have a completely set up brain, extra brain in their devices. But 2050, what is 2050? It looks very far away. It's not that much. We will be retired, will be that age, or should we put the question mark here? Because lifespan, life expectancy is also growing exponentially. It was, in the Western world, it was 40 years of average in 1900, it was 80 years in 2000, it was not 0 years in 1800. So we are going to see more and more people over 100. There's no social security system that can bear that if you do not postpone the retirement age. Our adolescents will be 50, which is halfway their lifetimes, or most likely less than that, and our 3-year-olds will be parents or not yet. That is what we mean with 2050. So that's the whys we need to go to Singularity University. All those reasons and many more we could give if we had time. The whats. What are we going to have in this 3-day seminar? This. Unemployment, because employment is going to change a lot and we need to be ready for that. I won't get into further examples. The who's are, considering that we've already been told, so someone has the chance to be there in less than 10 years, we should have companies there. This is the list of companies that attended the Singularity Summit in Amsterdam in November 2015. So by now we have 21 countries signed up in Spain, in Sevilla for next month. The executives need key vision for the digital evolution of the companies. The high potentials need development, and in order to be able to contribute to them, we have an opportunity to the VIP customers, but we also have an opportunity for the inquiring minds, inspirational. It's an inspirational experience. And of course you may try to get to Moffett Field, to NASA Ames, where Singularity is based, but if you want to go to the GSP, the rate is 50 applicants per admitted. If you want to go to the executive program, there's waiting list, and it's $12,000 to get there for 5 days. Whereas here it's a much lower price. And if you win the free ticket, then you only need to go to Sevilla. Sevilla is a place where we have the biggest technological park in Spain, the most important, most advanced solar plants in the world, pioneering. And it's one of the 3 cities that have been in the aeronautical business from the beginning, with Toulouse and Seattle. It's going to be held at the Opera Theatre, Carmen's Opera Theatre. The VIP dinner is going to take place at the oldest royal palace still in use in Europe. And the final dinner will be at the Navigation Pavilion, the place where Magellan set off to do the first circumnavigation of the globe. When? In March, which is within a month. So, to finish, this is the tsunami. The tsunami was a 6-meter high wave that created a lot of destruction. But if you use it properly, you can have a lot of fun. This is a 10-meter high wave, well used, and benefit was taken from it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you in Sevilla.
So there's a lot to take in there. What we're going to do now, we're going to swap over the PC one more time for the final speaker. But not only was Luis rushing through a lot of material, he does have to rush off quite soon, because I think before he goes, we give the audience a chance to ask 1 or 2 questions about the summits particularly. So if anybody has got a burning question on something you've heard so far, and you'd like to hear it from the managing director, please raise your hand, and we'll maybe take 1 or 2 questions now. Yes?
I'm from freelance.com. I was just wondering, how could we participate, or how could audience here participate, to take part in your discussion actively, meaning like as speakers or panelists or anything like that?
Well, the program itself is set by Singularity University. If there's anyone with a burning interest to try and be on stage, they should drop me a mail and I will discuss it with the people who make the decisions about it, which are in California.
Great, thank you so much.
Question here?
I have a question for Russell Buckley. Basically, I just wonder, so I'm a doctor and I was at SU in the summer at the GSP, and I just wonder, in something like healthcare, it's such a rigid industry where change is so slow and so difficult and so dangerous. How does the exponential affect that? Because I feel like it is all going to change very rapidly, but from the people that I work with, the view is that things cannot change because it's dangerous and it's complex.
Well, there's a whole medtech module presented by Daniel Kraft, who's a really fascinating speaker. I probably will explore this more. But I mean, I think it certainly can change. I mean, I'm chairman of a company called Touch Surgery, which is kind of training surgeons by giving them an operating theatre in their pocket to practice and monitor how to do surgery, which is, I mean, not so big over here yet, but it's huge in the US already. It's being endorsed by Duke, Stanford, Harvard, all the leading teaching hospitals. So I think
I guess I feel like, yes, for individual doctors and individual people, but in terms of the system change, I mean, I'm probably just talking mainly about the NHS here. Yeah. What I foresee is individual doctors and individual patients become exponentially empowered, but the system is still, back in kind of, I mean, we use pagers and faxes.
Yeah,
perhaps the answer is in small, nimble companies that are interfacing with the NHS. Yeah. The work of Diamandis and Cutler that I mentioned at the beginning, they talk not just about the technology, but they talk about two other aspects. They talk about the change in psychology that you need, but also the change in organizational structure. And they talk about exponential organizations as well as exponential technologies. And there are new insights into how to organize small organizations which go, they say, 10 times as fast as the large organizations. Now, it's not all doom and gloom for large organizations, because some large organizations have turned themselves around very nicely, and we're going to be hearing from Cisco in a minute. So some have got that potential, but I think you're exactly right. This is not just about technology, it's about psychology, and it's about organizational change, and all three things, as I understand, are covered in the summit in Seville. Maybe one last question, especially for Louis. I mean, Russell will be here later. Question in the back, yes?
Hi there. I did notice that finance or money was captured in the headings, and that seems to be a pretty important force in the world driving, if economics drives politics. Do you have any future, is finance or fintech, or even the future of money going to be covered in this, in the SU session, or will it be covered in the future?
Do you have the fintech? Do you have innovation in financial systems?
I'm sure there's going to be finance around the summit. I cannot recall.
There is one organized in the US. They actually had it last year.
Yeah, that's the Exponential Finance Conference itself. Yes. But the financial aspects of everything will be definitely mentioned in the conference.
Okay. And in the UK last year there was a grand challenge on fintech innovation in financial technology, which was organised by the Singularity University here in the UK, and I'm sure there'll be more later. So absolutely, there's lots of innovation there too, not just of the bad kind, because it gives us all these credit defaults, swaps that leads to downturns in the economy, but lots of bright new innovation as well, including cryptocurrencies, including lots of other things. So absolutely, that's part of the future.
And let me mention, sorry Nick, just one more thing. One of the things we're going to do in Sevilla that has not taken place in previous summits is organized networking, because maybe you need to talk to this guy, but you don't know each other and you don't know that you have common interests. And that is something we will definitely do, so that finance, I will get sure it's one of the topics that are signed up at some point.
And you may remember the Made in Space group that I showed in the video at the beginning. The people in Made in Space had never met each other until they went to the Singularity University. And they were brought together by one of the faculty members, because they hadn't even thought of doing 3D printing at all, but one of the faculty members who was involved in robotics, he made them think about it. So they grew together. So one of the things you will get from the Singularity University, you'll be surrounded by people who have got the dare to think the same as you. They're not just content with the status quo. They're not just looking for a 10% increase on what they're doing already. They believe it might be possible to take a hold of some of these technologies for a 10 times increment. And you want to be around people who've got that mindset. And that is the other reason to be there. Now, innovation doesn't just come from these small, very agile companies. Innovation does come too from large companies again. And I'm pleased to say the Singularity University has got a number of corporate sponsors who very much buy into this vision. One of the corporate sponsors you can guess, because we're in a building that's looked after by Google. Google is a corporate founder and corporate sponsor for Singularity University. You may have seen Larry Page, the co-founder of Google, in one of the videos earlier. Another very valued and cherished corporate sponsor of the Singularity University is Cisco. And we're very pleased to have as the final speaker this morning the collaboration CTO of Cisco here in the UK and Ireland, Nick Christos, who's going to give us a deeper insight as to what's necessary beyond the technology to make these actually have an impact in people's lives. So let's welcome Nick Christos.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So thank you, Dave. And I think for you that you are not part of maybe the telecoms industry, I think I owe an explanation on the collaboration kind of word and the usage of word, which is, by the way, not only used from Cisco but from everybody, from Google, from Microsoft, even from the most traditional kind of vendors like Avaya or Siemens and Unify now. Actually, they use the word collaboration to express what the communication technology is all about. You see, when we started about 15 years ago, it was all about IP telephony, and it was the idea that we can put everything over a single network. It was the idea that we can now take these mountains of machines that they were the analog and the digital PBXs, and we can connect people using a network in a much more flexible way with a much more flexible architecture. We moved from IP telephony to IP architecture, to IP communications by the addition of video or better quality sound or content over the same network. And then actually in about 2006, we started talking about unified communications. We can do it from any device, anywhere, at any time. But up to that point, everything was about technology. Everything was about what technology can do. Everything was about innovation from engineers for the world. The one hurdle that it actually stopped us from really putting this technology everywhere, it was not that it was not robust or that it didn't do what it was supposed to do or that it wasn't scalable enough. It was that people didn't use it. You see, the biggest problem is that I can talk to you about video and how video is going to improve the productivity and how video is going to change the process in healthcare or in every kind of business. But it only happens if you make the assumption that people will use it. Hence the word collaboration. Collaboration is about people. It's about processes. It's about culture. It's about how you actually take into consideration how people use technology. And how do you consider people into the initial kind of design? How do you consider people in the initial innovation? How do you see what people do, not only what technology actually can do for them, and how people are going to take this technology and use it every day? My role in Cisco is not only about focusing on technology, focusing on strategy and what we're bringing actually into the market. It's also about having the maximum possible impact in people using this technology. If we see what happens into actually the working environment in the last kind of decade, we have seen the diminishing of the task worker. In most organizations, specifically for UK, people nowadays, they need to make decisions of what they do. We used to have the knowledge worker and the task worker. Now we have everybody needs to make decisions. Everybody needs to communicate. Productivity is measured based on how efficient people can access information and how can efficiently communicate with each other. And the link between department and location has disappeared. Nowadays, you have organizations, public organizations or private organizations, that they will actually have the same department over multiple locations. They need to build a team that it doesn't really sit anymore together and talk to each other. They need to build trust between these people to be able to work together is paramount. And this is what is happening rapidly into the working environment. The employment is changing. From the point of technology, we've seen this explosion of mobile devices. Explosion of mobile devices. I mean, nobody could have predicted what is going to happen, 5, 6 years ago. If you think about 7 years ago, we didn't know anything about iPhone. We didn't know what a tablet was. 7.5 years ago, nobody knew what a tablet was. And suddenly now, it's almost a necessary part of everybody's actually working life or entertainment in their normal life. And we've seen sub-trends of this kind of explosion of mobile phones. We talked, the last 2-3 years, we talked a lot about BYOD, bring your own device. It's about bringing your own device into work and use it in order to work or in order to really merge the two lives together. But we've seen also sub-trends. We talk about nowadays about self-care IT. At the beginning, we thought, you know what, users have become much more technology savvy. That's why they want to manage their own devices. This is not true. The truth is, when people bring their precious device into the work environment, they don't want some IT guy to touch it. It becomes a personal device. And for that reason, when you design applications, you have to consider that people will set it up, will administer it themselves. You cannot anymore design applications and assume that some technical guy will actually set it up. It's not anymore the case. Cloud started about 4 years ago, and it was a commercial concept. It was the idea of, let's not buy the technology, let's actually rent it. Let's get it per month, per user per month. Cloud now is about speed of deployment. We can go from something that used to take 2 years to deploy a proper solution to months. It's about risk avoidance. It's about elasticity. For most big organizations, they have to calculate the worst case scenario. A big organization, when they deploy technology, they say, we're 5,000 people today, we're going to be 10,000 people in 5 years from now, we need to buy a 10,000 people kind of scalable solution. Today with the cloud, they can say, we buy what we have today, if we expand, we buy more, if we shrink, we give back. And that's how suddenly cloud is affecting businesses today. And then video. Video has evolved also. Video started by, let's not travel, let's do a video call. But you know what? People didn't use it. Video has become this kind of ubiquitous kind of entity in the last 3 years. YouTube is now the #1 how-to search engine. When people want to find how to do something, they don't go to Google. They go to YouTube. They don't go to the search engine. They prefer to watch a video than actually read a document. The consumption rate of a video is so much higher. In a 3 minutes video, it's a 20-page document. Nobody will read 20-page document, but they will happily watch a 3-minute video. And video now has become the main way of passing information and of people communicating. When we started with video, and I'll give you some personal examples of that. When we produced the first kind of video phone, our main focus was, let's make it simple. Let's make it as simple as a phone call. People can use a phone device. Let's make a video phone look like a phone, and then people will use it. As a concept, it was brilliant. People were able to use it. After we deployed the first customer, we saw post-its in front of every camera. We saw the cameras looking at the ceiling. We went back and said, what's wrong? What happened? We gave you video to enhance your communication, and you cover video. And the truth was, people said, we're not always ready to have a video call. And you can tell them, you can go into the settings and pretty much say, I don't want the video to come automatically. Only when you want it, the video will actually happen. They never knew they'd done it right. They still wouldn't trust it. They would put the sticker on the front of the camera because that was how they would trust the device. So easiness was one part. Trusting and feeling that you're in control of technology was the second part. But it was a third part into how video became very successful in business today. The third part was quality. I'm an engineer. When I talk about quality, I need to talk numbers. 1080p, 30 frames per second, safe, for safe. The truth is, when you talk to people, quality is translated very, very differently. when you have a face-to-face communication with somebody, when you are in the same room and you talk to them and you can see in their face, they're not really interested on what you say. I become even more animated. I move more around. I try really to drag their attention. Or that they disagree with what you say and you take a different angle. You see, that's the quality that we're talking about. If you have a video call and you change the way that you behave based on what you see, then you are hooked. Then video has replaced your face-to-face communication. It became from a gimmick to a tool. It became from a gadget into a tool. And when people have this kind of experience, that's when people really start using more and more the technology. So a big step for us was to really now consider it completely different when we design. Consider not anymore the technology and what we can do with the technology, and then how do we steer it towards experience? How do we steer it to make people use it? But let's design it completely different. Let's bring experience first, technology second. Actually, to do this, it was a bit more complicated than just thinking about that. Because from our side, I'm Cisco. When I go to customers, they expect to see a machine, and then when I ask feedback, they tell me what it does and what it can do. That can fix problems. That can actually address issues. But when you want to leap, when you want to create something completely new, you cannot really do it this way. So we hired a company. We hired a company that they didn't know they were hired by Cisco. We hired a company and they went out to really get us the information about what do people want from the technology, how do people want to communicate. And they came back and of course they said it has to be easy. Of course they said it has to be trustworthy, people have to be in control. The quality has to be absolutely there. But then they said it has to be pleasant, it has to be delightful. I'm originally Greek, and I have to say I struggled with the word delightful. I couldn't comprehend. And then my biggest problem was, how do I go to an engineer and I say, make it delightful? Make this thing delightful. And then we ask, tell us more. Tell us what do we need to do? What is the experience that you're trying to achieve? So they said, when you buy an iPad, for some of you that you bought an iPad or a tablet, the experience starts from the point that you buy it. The box is amazing, and Apple won most of their customers actually from the box. You open the box and you take it out, and you know what? People, when they take an iPad, they don't switch it on immediately, which is amazing. It's a device that's designed to actually do something. They don't switch it on. They touch it. They turn it upside down. They look at it at the back. They feel the aluminum at the back, and they see how much it weighs. They build a bond with the actual device. Nobody goes into a conferencing room, goes into the screen and starts touching it. It would look a bit awkward. But we say to the engineers, that's what we want. We want people to go into a conference room and start touching the screen. Make it so people can go and touch it. I'll show you a video, and then I'll go into more detail.
Where are you?
Me? I'm everywhere.
So this is just a kind of a cheesy story about how people are using technology, but it's a very good run through about devices without people really getting stuck on what the devices do. There are a lot of features. There are a lot of ways that the devices look, and going back on what I was saying before about making the device, making people touching it. Before you said I would create like 55-inch iPads, the concept of really creating now these devices, these endpoints, that they are very appealing to the user. That they actually, we looked into very, very details, a lot of details that really can make the attitude of the people that are around them really different. We actually focused, believe it or not, and I don't normally do this a lot often, we focused as much on the front, as much on the back, as much we actually focused on the front. If you see, we branded actually the back. We don't even call it back. We now call it the second front. It's really attention to that detail. No cables, no adapters, no points to really plug things. No things that are going to make it complicated. You see, it's amazing. The hardware element of what the device does is very, very crucial of how people actually treat it, even in a room. And we did design everything now with this concept. You know, I don't know if you know what is the Red Dot Awards. They are industrial design awards that normally are reserved for Apple or for Bang & Olufsen or for this kind of company that they are having excellence in design. We got 6 Red Dot Awards on our cable management, on how we actually hide it, every cable behind. And it has created a completely different response from the users. We introduced things in the market in the last 2 years. We refreshed our complete portfolio. We redesigned everything from scratch. We actually created desktop devices. This is a 24-inch touchscreen. There are features on that maybe users will never use, but they are actually in their own self. They're amazing innovations. For example, this is a DX80. This device has actually a mechanical system on the microphone, which in combination with software, it doesn't get any surround noise. So you can sit in an open environment, talk openly on a speakerphone to this device, and the other side does not take any surround noise because it's eliminated using software and actually hardware to do this. We concentrate, as I mentioned, not only on the front but also at the back, and it's the last back kind of photo that I'm going to show you, but one thing I want to show you here is again on the detail, and you believe it or not, even we have a patent on this hinge. We noticed that you actually design a touchscreen. If you have a 24-inch touchscreen, people feel they get tired by actually touching the screen if they're standing in front of them. So you need to make the screen to be able to go flat on the table. This is a hint that allows to push the screen back and really lay flat on the table, really focusing on how people use it. And believe it or not, this has exploded. Matching it with the right price to address almost every user, these devices now are the most popular devices in every industry, including the public sector, including the NHS, including HMRC. They just decided last year, 15,000 of their agents are actually using these devices, are able to have video conferencing calls, not only between them, but also with customers, really creating, almost transforming the way that they communicate. Is we realize that when technology really makes an impact, is when at the beginning everybody used technology to cut costs. The next step is to make things happen faster. But the most powerful thing is when they transform the way that they are working. We invite our customers to see what we can do with our technology and invite them to think of new ways of actually using it. Now, I talk a lot about experience, and there's one element that I wanted to touch. I don't want you to live here and think that experience is only about having beautiful devices on the desk or having things that you actually like to touch. Experience comes from an amazing user interface. It comes from the software that has the right application and it gives you the confidence to actually use it. It comes from the hardware, from the shape, from the way that you actually interface and the power that you introduce in the endpoint. It comes from this kind of quality that the endpoint can create. But it comes also from the infrastructure. It comes from the amazing services that they can link things together. And it does come from a very good network. And I know that I'm Cisco, and in Cisco we like to talk about the power of the network. But the truth is, you can have the most beautiful device in front of you, but if the video is pixelized or the video drops because the bandwidth is not good or because you don't have the right priority on the network, the experience goes out of the way. You bring them all together, and you have this amazing experience that starts with how you feel with the device, and it goes to how you use it every day to change the way that you work. So when we look actually into the future and we address what next, what do we do now? Our mission is to put these devices, our mission is to put, and by the way, it's a huge portfolio that addresses everything, is to really bring them everywhere. We have worked very hard to create the cloud and the on-premises to come together. We call it Cloud Fusion. And Cloud Fusion is this ability to integrate services in the cloud. It's integrate services in the cloud and integrate them with devices that are actually in premises. They're the device that they exist in organizations and in companies. And then the potential of what we can create when we do this is unlimited. We are actually creating features that we never had before. Let me give you some examples. You are on the phone, you're on the mobile to somebody, you walk into a room that has a video endpoint. There is no reason. Why? Because the service that you are using on the cloud at the moment, with the service that this device is actually connected, they are connected. There is no reason why you shouldn't be able to enhance the communication and move from a normal mobile call to a full video call. Standing in front of a shop that has a big screen on the outside, you should be able to actually use that to enhance your communication by actually bringing the video from the other side. Going in front of every laptop, we introduce things that are called intelligence proximity, that we actually can identify when things are close to each other. If you notice on the video, the lady came into the room and she was able to grab almost from the screen what was their content into her iPad. This we call it intelligent proximity, and I'll give you the secret of our source. It's not based on Bluetooth or anything like that, because Bluetooth requires pairing, it requires setup. We want to create something that you walk into the room and suddenly you are connected and you can bring the device together. We actually use sound. Sounds like a very old technique. We do use ultrasound. All our devices are humming in the background. We had to test against dogs and animals in order to make sure that they're actually safe, but they're humming in the background and the devices are connected to each other by sound. So you walk inside the room, you walk close to the device, it knows that you're near to it. And then you can make things happen. So just as a closing statement, I believe personally very much that the only way that technology can be successful, the only way that technology can deliver on the promise that is going to change the world is if we focus on how people interface with it. If we focus on how we can introduce it into processes, how can we change the culture of people, how can we influence people's attitude towards technology. And it's not easy. It doesn't happen from the one time to the other. We have now whole teams that they are focusing on strategy in the public sector of how do they make people to use technology. What techniques do you do? How do you market it internally? And I love, and I mentioned I'm an engineer, I love to see innovation, I love to see what we can do with technology in the future. But the impact comes only when actually people start using it more and more. So, with that said, that's me, and thank you very much.
Many thanks, Nick. We're going to formally wind up in a few minutes. Some of us will be networking here for up till 11 o'clock, so if there are other things you want to ask about, or if you didn't quite get a share of breakfast on the way in, you can have some on the way out. Before we draw this, does anybody have any burning questions for Nick about the collaboration and the user design and the other networking examples he talked through? Anything you didn't quite catch? Yes, Gavin?
So this is probably going to be a really dumb question, but specifically on this, your collaboration technologies, do you have like an open innovation network?
Yes, well, we do. And I have to say, David mentioned that we are sponsors of Singularity, but also we have a Cisco developer network. And we do have development partners. Of course, we have a very wide partner kind of community. But we do have development partners. You see, and maybe 1 minute to say here. What we are creating, and sorry for using sometimes kind of marketing words, but we're creating horizontal kind of technology. We're creating functionality. The only way for us to touch the different individual industries is by ecosystem, by partners that they will take that and they will create solutions, vertical solutions into the industry, into healthcare, into manufacturing, into retail. We do have a whole DevNet environment in Cisco, and we do welcome everybody to really go and use our technology. There are APIs, there's a lot of hooks into how we use technology, and we do have a very strong partnership program that we help also partners really to go through that.
Okay, so I could log into that DevNet.
Of course.
Let me refer back briefly once again to the book Bold, which I'm just reading by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler. They talk about the technologies, they talk about the change in psychology, they talk about the change in organizational agility, but they also say use the crowd. Not use the cloud, I guess there's using the cloud, but using the crowd means get the innovation from multiple sources, and that requires platforms, it requires open innovation. So great. Very quick question, Alex.
Yeah, I was thinking, maybe when you're coming up with an idea for a new user experience or a new product, maybe you could use something like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, not because you don't have the money to do it or something, but just to test the sort of market response, how the market would demand such a new kind of a user experience.
And you know, in some cases, I don't know, but in some cases we do. We actually we have tried Kickstart in some parts. Of course, you have to understand that there is a lot of investment from our side. We're a big company, a lot of property, you know, of IP that we need to take care of, and sometimes that's our hardest part. How do we say to people? How do we ask people without releasing too much information out? So again, going back, we do trust our ecosystem to deliver samples.
All right, so before other people disappear, I'm going to draw the winning prize. Thank you very much, Nick. In fact, we'll get Nick to draw the winning prize. You've got to be in the room. If you head it off, then I'm afraid you're not keen enough. I'm going to shake the top off. Wow. Ask you to put your hands in here. You can take from the top or the bottom or anywhere in between. So you can rummage around in here. There's plenty of cards. There's no magician's trick. Hey. So is Ian Fogg here? Ian Fogg, right. Now. Ian, what's your reason for wanting to go to this conference?
I'm most interested in machine learning and cognition.
Most interested in machine learning and cognition? There's definitely machine learning and cognition. Is that a good enough answer? Should we give him the prize?
Yes.
No. Well done. So, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for the speakers. If you brought anything in this room, please take it out again. That's the fire alarm. It's a schedule. You don't have to rush out. So you're welcome to stay here for a little bit, or you're welcome to help yourself to a croissant, or one of these evil-looking chocolate brownies, or healthy croissants, and chat to those of us who've been at the Singularity in the past. There's one or two of us still in the room, or talk about London Futurists, which I head on. So thanks to all of you coming. There are leaflets, by the way, which you can find outside about the event. They're slightly out of date. There's a lot in here, but the actual event's got even more than was included. Because as you know, printing is a bit old-fashioned technology, and it hasn't been updated. And also copies of Louis's card out there. So if you want to send him your proposal, then do. Question here?
Will the videos be circulated?
We are going to hope that the videos have turned out nicely, in which case we're going to put them online. Yes? Right. So good to see you all.